Well, shalom, shalom, everyone. This is YAHEeNA, Yisrael, and this is our weekly women's call. The reason why we put this call together is because we feel like in order for us to heal as a nation, we have to start coming together and discussing our issues. And some of the issues that we have experienced as women in this captivity, experienced as women in our marriages, in our relationships with our husbands, our significant others, our children, all of these things come into play as we live in the society that we're in today. And in order for us to heal as a nation, we have to start talking about these things and finding solutions. So this is what this class is about. We have quite a few very interesting women on this call from all walks of life. Everyone has a different background, but we've been on here for a while. So this is the first time that we've decided to share with our community the things that we talk about. We've spent a lot of time dealing in relationships because we feel like that is the biggest issue for us as women. And in order to understand how we react or how we conduct ourselves in relationships have a lot to do with who we are as a person. So from some of the studies that we've done and some of the calls that we've had, we've decided to compile some information to help us to put some of these things in practice. If I can do this, it's as simple as that. So tonight, I think we're going to start with the issue of boundaries and how to set boundaries, because I think that we have to be able to do that first before we can identify anything else in ourselves or in a person. So I put together some things about boundaries and what boundaries are, in terms of how to set them, because a lot of people don't know how to set boundaries. A lot of people are not strong enough, they think, to set boundaries. So these are some of the things that we think is important to help us to have some sort of control over the choices that we make. Because for the most part, a lot of our choices are made for us, and people steal our choices without us actually having the right to make those choices, whether it's through trickery, whether it's through manipulation, whether it's through control, whatever it is. So tonight, I wanted to use the topic of boundaries, in order to understand how to use them. Now, there are several types of boundaries to set. There are physical boundaries. This deals with your private space, your how you conduct yourself in the public, and then you have emotional boundaries. How to have healthy emotional boundaries in a relationship, whether it's with your significant others or with whomever, your children or whomever. And then we deal with sexual boundaries, which this would be, in our group, catering to those who are married, because we are following Yah's law, so we don't really deal with outside sexual affairs with anyone, because we are being obedient to Yah's law. But even in a marriage, we do believe that there has to be sexual boundaries. There has to be areas that are taboo that you just can't go. And then intellectual boundaries. Those are important. And then financial boundaries. How far do you go in a relationship when it comes to finances? How much do you let this person in to know your financial situation, in your relationships? And over the course of, I guess it's been a couple of months now, we have been watching different scenarios of women in different relationships, and how those relationships have really impacted their personalities because they didn't have any boundaries set. They allowed their emotions to go. So I think that this is very important for us to do this. And, Sister Athian brought this up one time that it really kind of stuck with me, where we were talking about how, women don't have any boundaries with other people, whether it's other men, in relationships. We just don't set boundaries. We're too freely accepting of things without having. And it doesn't mean that you're paranoid. It doesn't mean that you're overly suspicious. But you should set boundaries so that you can take your time. And you can be very cautious of how far you let other people go. And this is good to teach your children, to set boundaries, because my grandmother used to tell me everybody's not your friend. And I would be like, that's my friend. She said, no, a real friend is hard to find. She said, but in the terms of your life, you might have two. And you just have to be able to understand how to do those things. So I'm going to open up the floor and just ask, does anyone have any questions before we get started, as to what we're talking about now? Or do you want to add something? Don't everybody jump at once. Don't jump at once. Because it's very important, that we share this information with the women of Israel. They have to have this information. Anyone?
Well, I think in marriage there shouldn't be, and it's probably more like secrecy, because a husband and a wife should know how the bills are being taken care of and where the information is, insurances, and should one person get ill at a certain time, the other one should be able to pick up the slack right away.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my daughters, she knows nothing as to what get paid. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I'm tired of telling her that's not how it should be. You should know who your mortgage company is, how to contact them, whether phone or by mail, and what address you mail the mortgage off to, just in case something happens unexpectedly. Your house can continue until you get the other business straight. But her husband refuses to let her in on anything financial, and she seems okay with it. For me, it's not an okay thing. But, everybody's different. He says, well, that's my responsibility, and she don't have to know that. Yeah, but see, life is unpredictable also.
Right.
You don't plan to not be there to do your part. But if something happens unexpectedly, you still expect your household to run. And it can't run if the other party don't know where to begin.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's very important. And that has to do with communication and trust. Because if you're sharing partnership with each other and you're in a marriage together, you should be able to trust your partner to the point where they know everything. So, that I agree with you on that 100%. And usually what happens is, if something happens to the spouse who's doing the supporting, the other spouse is at a loss because they don't know where to go.
Right.
Or what to do. And, that should be something that should be put in place for you to know where to go and what to do. And that comes with trust. And that's something that they would have to sit down and have a conversation with as far as trust is concerned, because you have to know in the event that something's wrong. I understand what you're saying, because you know what? I feel the same way about one of my family members. If something happened to this person, I would not know who to call. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the
I think that's a case of control. I think that that's a controlling situation. I think, some men have to find a way of dominating, and if they're typically the breadwinner, those are cases of control. Because if something were to happen to him, trust me, he has a backup plan, and she's not it. She just doesn't know about it. And I've come to know situations where women are in marriages and they have no idea who your lender is for your house. If you have a car note, who the lender is. If there's any insurances, you don't know who is the insuree. So those are control situations where you always have to end up deferring back to the man, and those are not really safe spaces, because if something happens and she chooses, get divorced, and I'm not wishing that, you would almost have to get an attorney to find out that information.
Yeah.
And that really shouldn't be. You have a point, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of women that are like that. And, again, it is, like you said, it's control, and it's lack of trust. Because if you, like we said Saturday, if you're two consenting adults that have decided to come together and to have a relationship or a marriage, these are two grown-ups that have come together to decide to do this. So it should never be off balance because one's working and one isn't. Because everyone on the team is playing a vital role to keeping the machine running. So if you prefer the wife to be home to take care of the children, you have to be able to see the pros and cons to that, because that would save you from a whole lot of daycare money and traveling back and forth. If that's the role that she has decided to, or you guys have decided that this is the role she plays, and then you're the breadwinner, you're still a team.
Yeah, but she works also.
Oh, well, now that's a whole nother story, because if she's working and, she's helping to keep the machine running, then I would have to know what's going on and who's a part of what. I would have to know that. But again,
I didn't raise my girls that way. That's why I'm surprised that she, put up with that.
Well, you know what, sis, it's about, like I said, it's about boundaries, and this is how we have to change those. We have to start talking to our young women about how to stand up for yourself, because it's very important to do that. I know a man, and his motto was, and he told me this, he said, when my wife works and she comes home, she has to give me her check. And I laughed. I said, really? He said, yeah, that's my requirement. When she works, she has to bring her check home to me. And I said, and how does that work in terms of finances? I manage all the finances. I said, oh, okay. So she goes out to work every day. She brings her check home to you, and then you give her the amount of spending money that you think she should have. Is that how that works? Yeah, that's how I do it. So there are some men that do those things, and they do it that way. Now, to me, I couldn't do that, because I feel like this. If I'm going out to work and I am helping to keep the team going, then we can sit down and decide how much money to put in to make sure that the bills are met. But I'm not getting ready to hand you my check now. I'm just not going to do that.
No.
Nah. I'm not going to do that. Now, I'm just really not going to do that. I mean, that's, and that's control. But some women do, and they do those things, and they allow that to happen. And that's why setting boundaries are so important. Now, my question is, though, if this young lady is already in this way that the relationship is being ran, do you all think that she can change it now?
I think she can change it, but it's a risk. I think the risk is that if she pushes, he may leave, because, as someone said, this is a power issue. And I also think, would he want this done to him? Now, I doubt that this is how he would want his life run, to be totally dependent on someone, not knowing exactly what's going on. And even though she has her own money, what she needs to do is just think, because I don't know what's going on, I have to make contingency plans. But I'm thinking that this is the insecurity on his part.
Well, okay. She said you think it's insecure. Okay. I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, because it's as you were saying, it's a control issue. It's not reciprocal, and it doesn't seem like a really balanced relationship in that if something happens, there's life insurance, she doesn't know if mortgage is being paid. They could be sitting on the street one day because he hasn't paid the bills and handled his responsibilities, and she will have no clue until they're sitting on the curb.
Yeah.
And then how is that teamwork, though? Because if we love each other, and it goes back to that, if we love each other and we've committed to make this thing work and we're in this as a relationship together, why do you not feel it necessary to let me know these things? It's not like, I know a lot of people that are in marriages where the finances are totally separate, but at the right time they come together to make sure that everything that they need to keep their livelihood going is taken care of, because everybody contributes to what they have to do to make this happen. So it's something else that's going on where he feels like he doesn't have to do this for her, because that's not a team.
No, not.
It's not a team. And it's, when you love someone and you're in this together, you have to be a team player together, because anything can happen, like she said. And you see this a lot of times with a lot of women that have no clue what's going on. They just don't know what's happening in their livelihood. But that's what, again, do you think that he would be willing, or they would be willing to change this in the middle?
No, he's never going to change.
No.
This is my thing with men. Men come as is. He's never going to change. He is always going to be that way. She will be the one to make the adjustment. If he doesn't, he'll be on to the next. The next woman. And I'm not wishing divorce on anybody's relationship, but if it happens to be that, he will marry someone else the same way that she is. Men come as is. And I preference that, because women need to set your boundaries are your protection.
Yeah.
It's never going to change. I know so many women who have been in situations this way where they end up, because whatever he's doing financially, the government doesn't care. You are legally responsible for whatever debt and bills come in the house. He could be $100,000 in debt, and you go to court, half of it belongs to you.
That's true.
The government doesn't care about how much you love the person. They don't care about your teamwork. They care about dividing assets and liabilities. He's never going to change. He's always going to be this way. Either she's going to accept it or she's going to leave. And that's pretty much for most women, that is their choice. Most women will try and try and try. And, yeah, you will find some men that will, wake up and budge and say, okay, I need to fix myself because they see the value, but not enough for that to be the rule. It's usually the exception.
That's true. That is a very good point, especially for the assets and liability. In a marriage, you are responsible for whatever that person has done. And I remember when I was going through my divorce, my decision to get divorced, and I was a young woman. I had 3 small children, and I was struggling with it. And my mom, she just came and she sat down and she said, look, there comes a time in life, she said, and I know you love him. She said, but there comes a time in life where you have to put your feelings on a shelf. You have to start thinking logically. She said, because he can go out and get in all kind of debt. He can get in a car accident and hurt someone and be held liable for what he's done. There are a lot of things that can come against you, like you said, from a liability standpoint, while you're in your emotional feelings. She said, now look, if you're going to work it out, that would be great. She said, but it doesn't look like you're going to be able to work it out. And if you're not going to be able to work it out, then you have to cut ties, because it will end up coming back on you if you don't. And you know what? That rang volumes to me as a young woman, because I was only, 27, 26 years old? And it made sense. You know, if you're dealing with a person that's irrational and they're compulsive, you know, and at that point it was like, okay, I need to do something because I need to start over again, because I was a stay-at-home mom. You know, and I said, I need to do something to start over again. And that was what helped me make that decision. And I think that, like you said, women don't think it through, you know, because you got to be able to say, hey, whatever you're doing out there and whatever you're involved in, I'm responsible. I have a right to know what's going on in my household. You're right.
I'd like to say one thing my mom told me that's always stuck with me. She said, in business, be men. Take care of your business. Set the emotions aside, just as you were saying, but in business, be men. Cover your bases.
Because you're responsible. It's just not, we're not just together in a relationship, you know, to live together, cook, clean, and raise children and have sex and look pretty. Everything that one person does, the other person is responsible for it. They are.
And a marriage is like a business. And all the partners are responsible, and all the partners should know what's going on. And in a real business, that's how it is. In a marriage,
absolutely, sis. You're very right. Absolutely. And like she said, when you go to court, they don't care anything about the emotional side of it. Now, are you Mrs. So-and-so, so-and-so? Yes, this is your debt. So you have to know what's going on. You just cannot turn a blind eye or a deaf ear because he's going through whatever he's going through. You have a right to know what's going on because you're going to be held responsible for it. Now, there's another way to address this. If he doesn't want to let you in on what's going on, you can always, I think if I'm not mistaken, you can pull your own credit report and see the bills that you're being held liable for.
No.
If I'm not mistaken. You know what I'm saying?
No,
because you cannot?
No. When I get my credit report pulled, my husband cannot see any. I mean, he doesn't have any of my stuff on his, and I don't have nothing of his on mine.
We can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're much clearer now, yeah.
No, you can't see each other's stuff when you pull your credit report.
Well, if they bought the house together, though, and they have a
if they did stuff together, but if they came and walked into a situation that was already established, no.
Right. Well, I don't know how that happens.
Do you need to hire a lawyer, a financial lawyer, and pull those records? That's the only way. I mean, like if that's the case, if there's stuff that he had before you get married, nah. But if you live in a community property state, you're going to have to hire a financial lawyer to pull those records and do an investigation. Because you don't know if he's open credit card numbers, if he has your Social Security number. You have no idea if you're not getting it. But the government knows, and you would have to pull those records that way.
I'd like to point something out. None of this would be even necessary if there was transparency. All of this stuff that pulling records and credit reports, none of that would be even necessary if there was transparency, but it lends itself to distrust in the relationship. I happen to have been married to someone who had another family. You need transparency.
You do.
Well, I was legally separated, and because he was a horror. Anyway, in spite of the legal separation, I did not know that the government could tap into your money for that person if they drink themselves to stupor, have a stroke in the street, they pick the person up, take them to a hospital, find your phone number on this person, and for some reason they end up taking money out of your money for them because you're legally separated but not yet divorced. I had that experience years ago when I was young.
It depends on what state.
And that's not fair because he didn't take care of his children. He didn't do anything. He paid no child support at all. And the government never said you're in.
The first thing you need to do, any woman that wants to get divorced, before you file for separation or child support, is to file a bifurcation. When you have a bifurcation in court, that means any financial ties to that person are completely cut. That is the first thing you need to do. But when you don't know, you can't do it.
Sister Afia, how do you spell that?
I didn't know.
I can't. It's bifurcation. I can't even think of how to spell it, but it's called a bifurcation. Bifurcation. That is the first thing you need to do, and then get a separate address, P.O. Box, UPS store. That's the first thing you need to do. That cuts any money that whatever from that day on, once you have that court case or whatever state that you're in, you have that docket, that stops the money there.
I didn't know.
And a lot of women don't know. You just don't. That's the problem. Most people just don't know. Because if you knew that, that's the first thing you would have done when he went to the hospital and rang up his Social Security number. Then it would have been his problem.
Yeah, because
you guys were you're still legally married. Like for instance, North Carolina, you have to be separated for a whole year before you can file for divorce. Every state is different.
Well, I was separated from this person for 5 years, but I just couldn't afford a divorce at the time, and he didn't file for one.
At the time. And every state is different. Some states you can get married the same day. Some states you have to wait 3 days. You have to know the rules for your state. But when we don't do those types of investigations as women, we get screwed.
Sure enough.
That's why we deal with boundaries and being able to understand boundaries, because, like you said, love is one thing. You know, emotional attachment and feelings and love and all that warm and fuzzy stuff is one thing, but you have to take care of business. You have to know what's going on, and you have to be mature and sound enough to say, no, I'm going to be responsible. When I decide that I want you to be my marriage partner, that legally holds me responsible for every decision that you make from the day that we say I do and sign that paper. And I used to see a lot of women go into, when you see these guys that commit all these financial crimes on television, and they wives automatically divorce them 100 as quick as possible. And I'm like, wow, she didn't even stay around. But when you understand the devastation that causes that other person, you didn't even take into consideration who you were affecting. You were just thinking about yourself. So this is where you have to, again, we go back to that whole relationship thing. You have to look at the whole relationship and say, am I really in this relationship for the right reasons? And does this person really love me the way he says he does? Because I'm like you, I'm not going to be married to anybody and not know what's going on, and I'm being held responsible for what you do. And now it's all a secret, because I would want to know, why is it a secret? I know. You owe it to yourself to know. And that
is not always.
Go ahead.
Oh. It's not always in the negative capacity.
Well,
probably about 8 years ago, when I was working, I was still in the church. I was working at the bookstore. And I worked there part-time. It was a lady who was one of the janitors. And she was just crying, asked me to borrow some money. I gave her some money. I talked to her. I said, what was going on? Well, come to find out, she was married to a man that was very wealthy. He was a CPA, tax accountant out here in Washington, D.C. He took care of everything, loving, happy, wonderful family. But he didn't take care of himself. This man had a massive stroke. He was completely paralyzed on his right side, could no longer work. She never had a job, never did anything. They were currently living in someone's basement because she didn't know any information that he had, but he took care of the family.
Right.
They went from living from a 6-bedroom home to living in someone's basement with their 3 children because she didn't know anything about picking up the mortgage, getting social protections, nothing. And they were still happily married. It's not just the negative end. You need to know what's going on in your household.
You do. I agree with you 100%. You do. You have to know. And guess what? That doesn't even stop with your husband, because right now, like I told Malcolm, I said, I'm in the process of laying things out in the event that something happens to me where my children know where to go. If this happens, dial this number. If this happens, call these people. If this happens, I have this covered. If this happens, I get this amount of money to sustain my lifestyle until I get back to where I am physically. Because if you don't tell anybody, they'll not know what to do. They won't know. And that comes with trust. Because really and truly, we really don't have nothing anyway as it come around to it. But for some reason, we feel like that it's important for us to keep things a secret. And it's like, no, somebody needs to know something. But I agree with you. I agree with you at all. You should have a person that you can say, okay, this is who you need to call in the event that something happens. This is covered by protection. Because really, at the end of the day, he wasn't taking care of his family if he didn't do that. Because if he was making that kind of money, there should have been certain things put in place in order for you to be able to sustain yourself in the event something like that happens. It shouldn't go out the window. We have to be able to cover ourselves in the event and let someone know, okay, if I have a heart attack and I'm incapacitated, I have this place, and this is in place through my job where you can call them and they automatically give you $10,000 so that I can just keep the rent going and stay in my house. We have to be able to think about those things. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Because if nobody knows, nobody knows. And unfortunately, these companies ain't just going to call you and say, oh, we heard you had a stroke. By the way, don't you remember you signed up for this? No, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. But I agree. So, that's where, boundaries have to be set, but that has to go. I think that you have to start that going in, because they call it love bombing. Sometimes men just love bomb you to death where you act like you just done lost it all. Oh, he loves me so much. No, business is business. Let's sit down and talk about the business.
I think more than business, though, this actually speaks to the level of intimacy that you can have in a relationship. I was listening to someone, and they gave the definition of intimacy as into me you see. I like it because that means that the fundamental person, if they're very, stripped away with nothing, you know who they are. You accept them for who they are. And so you don't have to say, this is what I'm doing, and you don't know about it. But if you know everything that's laid out, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you say, I love you regardless of all of that stuff, then you can relax in the relationship because there won't be any surprises. There won't be I didn't know you were doing that. What does that mean? Because you'll know. And you can actually relax and have a level of comfort knowing that there aren't going to be any surprises, that there may be something that I can't see because there's a lack of transparency. You'll be able to say, you know what, I think we may need to discuss this, but you can't even discuss it if you don't know that what's going on. But I think it really does kind of set up a barrier because there's a wall there. There's something that you can't get around because you have no knowledge of it. You can't even discuss it.
Exactly. And sis, I agree with you 100%. That is how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. But again, it goes back to the fact of, am I with the person that I need to be with? And then if I'm not, am I just going to remain here and let things go on as they are, or am I going to try to change the situation? Because you're not going to change the person. You know, like you said, very rarely do men say, okay, I made a mistake, I got a really good wife, I'm just going to change the way I do things. But you have to be able to make a decision about those things because, you know, I know so many couples that are not together at all. You know, I guess it's because of the era that we were born in. Because when I look at my grandmother and my grandfather paid most of the bills. He paid the majority of the bills. Now, my grandmother worked, and she brought her money home, too. And she paid some of the bills, but he paid the majority of the bills. He was the major breadwinner of the family, but she worked a full-time job. So I saw that. I saw my mother and my father work together and have a house and have this and do different things. However, it was different from their relationship than what I saw my grandmother and my grandfather do. Because there was, this is mine, that's yours, we'll come together and we'll cover the bills. You know, and that's how they lived. And that was fine if that's how they chose to do it. You know, and there were arguments and different things about money and, you know, bills and different things like that, but they did it that way. And then we fast forward to our relationships that we have in this generation, and you see that some people are living together like they're roommates. I pay this half, I pay my half, you pay your half. That's fine if that's how you do it. There's nothing wrong with it. Long as the lifestyle is continued, however you choose to do it, you do it. You know, but if there's secrecy in the relationship and you don't want this one to know what you have over here, or you don't want this to be a part of this, there is a problem somewhere. But people stay in the relationship because they do. They feel like, hey, it works for me. I don't have an issue with it. I'll just stay here and do it the way I've been doing it. And you pray that nothing happens detrimental. That's what you do. You know, you have to, and if those people decide, okay, I'm going to keep my check, you keep yours, we're going to have a savings account that we save some money together. People do that too. But if there's division and there's separation to the point where everybody, how much money you need and what you have, there is something else going on in there. And if you in a situation where you don't know what's going on, why don't you know what's going on? What's the reason why you don't know what's going on? And you have to be honest with yourself, you know, and then that's when you have to ask yourself, am I where I'm supposed to be? Is this healthy for me? You know? A lot of people do. Very difficult. I would be devastated if I had to move in somebody else's basement with my kids and my husband. Why? What happened? Because, see, if we had to sit down together and we had a conversation about, okay, what kind of programs does your job have where that will cover you in the event this happens? Or what kind of programs do they have in the event that this happens? We need to sign up for those things because anything can happen. But when you don't have those things in place, you know, then, you know, they have all kind of stuff, disability insurance, all kind of things out here now, AFLAC, all kind of stuff is out here now that we have to have in place. And you just, you know.
If he decides to not pay child support, you can get insurance on child support for lack of child support payments. There's a lot of things that people just don't know about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it is now. You know, it's a lot of things. Like I said, that's why communication is so important, because of the unforeseen what if. You have a car accident and can't work for 6 months. then what happens? So that's why it's important to know. What do we have in place? What kind do we have mortgage insurance that, to be able to protect us in the event? What's in place? So that's why it's bad not to know. And if I was your daughter, I would sit him down and tell him those things. What if something happens to you tomorrow? How are we supposed to survive? I have no information about anything. So that's one way of addressing that. You have to be able to say with the what if. Do we have a savings account? Is there enough money in there to sustain us? How long do we have this money available to us? And then if he still persists not to tell you, I would have to find out why. Even if they doing something illegal, I want to know. So that's very important, and that's where boundaries come in at. It is very important to know about those boundaries, and those are financial boundaries. Yes, ma'am. Somebody had something you want to say? Because financial boundaries are about money. You have to be able to decide, are we going to have are we going to have joint accounts? Are we going to have separate accounts? Are we going to have a discretionary fund for the family? If we're going to put our monies together, are we going to decide how much money we're going to each spend? Are we going to be on a budget? How are we going to work this? You have to set some financial goals and boundaries up front. Because it helps the relationship to function effectively. Because nobody wants to feel like they're being disrespected or they're being taken advantage of. It's very important for everybody to feel valued in the relationship. It's a value thing. It's okay, we're a team. We have to work together as a team. We love together as a team. Everything is teamwork. We have to be able to do this. And if you feel like that this is not what you do with your mate, then honestly, not your daughter, but when other people look at this, they be like, well, I don't have that. I don't want him to know nothing. I don't want it. We don't do that. And then that's when you have to decide, this may not be what I need to be in. And some people, guess what they do? That's why some people get prenuptial agreements coming in the door.
Yep, I don't blame them.
Coming in the door, they get a prenuptial agreement. In the event that this marriage doesn't work out, then you'll be entitled to X, Y, and Z. It protects you. Some people get post-nuptial agreements after they get married. Those hold up in court too. So, it's not emotional anymore. It's just not oh, I love you, and we just going to jump into this, and we're going to have a happily ever after, and we're going to be together forever, and I just trust everything you do. Because it should be that way. It really should be that way. But when you feel like you're in a relationship where it's not that way, then like she said, it's a wall up somewhere. Everybody starts to going back to their prospective corners. And if you're going to be like that, then I'm going to keep mine to myself. And it should never be that way if you're in a relationship, but it is a lot of times. It is a lot of times. And like I told that brother, it ain't no way I'm going to work hard every day and come home and give you my check now. That's not going to happen. Now, I will help. And we can sit down and decide what we need to do to make this thing function. But I'm not handing you over my check. So So I think, those financial boundaries are very, 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 very important. And like she said, you have to have some transparency. Some women don't even know how much money their husbands make. Very important.
No, I'm the type, I have to know how much. I have to know all the information.
Absolutely. You should. I mean, this is your husband, because you're going to be held responsible for it anyway.
Yep.
You're going to be held responsible for it. And I think that, that's where, Israel gets over, because Israel don't want to get married legally. And I think that that's a lot of reasons why, that these men are not wanting to be held responsible for the responsibility of having a wife and a family. And they use that fact, we in captivity, we don't want to do what the white men do. And no, it's bigger, it's deeper than that. It's way deeper than that. So they make this makeshift wedding up, that everybody gets dressed up and ooh and ah and cool, like they doing something back that we did 2,000 years ago. And then they had this makeshift wedding that's really a performance that has no substance, because they claim it's before Yah, but before you know it, it's over with. The woman has nothing. She walked away from everything, and she has nothing. She's not able to have anything legally. She can't get any of his pension. She can't get anything. Child support. Well, she can probably get child support, but that's about it.
So this has me going, you're supposed to do things decently and in order. You are not supposed to enter into a relationship that when people look at it, they think that you're doing something that's less than honorable, that you have made a commitment to your wife or your husband that is less than what people that make no profession of knowing Yah, they exceed you in what they do in terms of their commitment to one another. Mm-hmm. As you said, it's backwards. We are supposed to standard. And I also go back to what those patriarchs had to do to get their wives. And once they had those wives, it was acknowledged not only within Israel, but outside of Israel. You can see the kings honored those relationships. It wasn't something where it was, we just say it before Yah. No, it's like everybody and their mother knew and recognized it, even more so than you would find elsewhere. So it's absolutely unacceptable. I'm being nice when I say that.
I know you are. And you look at it and it's like, please, this is you, like you said, this is doing Yah a disservice. It's a disgrace that you feel like that she's not worthy enough for you to do that with. And you using the fact, we in this land, this ain't our land, and this ain't our response. Guess what? He told you to honor the laws of the land. And when you look at Joseph, you can use Joseph as an example. Joseph was
Hallelujah.
He married an Egyptian woman because that's what the Most High wanted him to do, and he had an Egyptian wedding, and he followed the laws of the land. Esther did the same thing when she was in Iran, when she was in Persia. So these are excuses where the people don't want to take the responsibility necessary to make this thing legit. They don't want it. They can just walk away from that like nothing.
And if you need some New Testament, he said, give what belongs to Yah to Caesar, and give what belongs to Yah to Yah.
That's right.
Make them do things legally.
And these women are falling for this stuff because, again, they have no boundaries, and they're being manipulated into performing these services at the whim of these men without any value to themselves. They are.
May I add, when the patriarchs went to get their wives, they worked for those women, and they brought things for them. So, working 7 years for a wife, and he didn't come empty-handed. Now, when we look at other nations, they have the women provide the dowry, but that's not how it's done in Israel. Men are supposed to come with the substance and wherewithal to take care of that wife prior to entering into a relationship, and it's supposed to be acknowledged before Yah and everyone else in the nations in which they reside. We're supposed to exceed them.
Absolutely. No doubt, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, for sure. Absolutely. But again, until somebody steps up and say, this is how we do it over here, and be that model, it's always going to look off balance to the rest of the world. It'd be like, I don't know what they over there. Who knows? Who knows? So, like I said, it's all about boundaries because we have to be able to teach women how to set boundaries. Don't accept it. They can't do it if you don't accept it. And then you see these poor girls, they got about 9, 10 babies running behind them. They look miserable. They're unhappy because these people are trying to live something in a captive mind, in a captive mindset. And it's like, oh, my goodness gracious and mercy. I don't know.
I'd like to add, I speak from experience. My grandfather and my grandmother had 16 children, and he provided for all of them. They had a farm. He worked. I can remember seeing him on the tractor, out in the tractor, riding along. He used to go out and pick cotton, do anything and everything that he needed to do to support that family. And they, in turn, supported him in his efforts to support the family. But first and foremost, his obligation and his commitment was to the family. He did not bring children into the world that he was not willing to support or unable to support. And as I said, he did whatever was needed, short of robbing somebody, to support the family. The biblical mandate. Sometimes, as I've talked to my aunts and uncles, they only had beans or maybe tripe. I can remember eating tripe, the inside of a cow's stomach, with vinegar on it. I can remember eating hard biscuits. I can remember if you didn't get in there early enough to get some food that you weren't going to eat because there were a lot of people. But you know what? No one starved. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have running water, and we used outhouses. Seriously. Mm-hmm. But the commitment was to my grandmother and his children with my grandmother.
Absolutely.
And he was proud of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I understand what you're saying, the sacrifices that are necessary to be made for a family, the showing the other person the level of their value to them. You have a value to me. You mean something. You're important to me. It's not just for support. I don't just need you around because you pay the bills or you got insurance coverage to cover. No, I value you because I want to be here. I'm here because I want to be here. And you're important to me. And that has to start that open dialogue. Let's sit down and you know what? Let's sit down and go over everything because you need to know these things. But when a person is hiding things, it's the reason. It's a reason. And that's really true. So, like I said, those financial boundaries, those things have to be set. And then even when you're dating, until you decide that you're going to get married and you all become a couple, there shouldn't be any discussion of finances or how much money I make or any of that. That should be kept very confidential and personal, in my opinion. Why should you need to know that? Like I said, when we start meeting people, the first thing we do is go on an interview. Well, where do you work? Oh, really? Well, what do you do for a living? Oh, they already sizing you up. They calculating it in their mind. Oh, really? How many children do you have? Oh, where do you live? It's an interview that we go on, that we shouldn't have to go on. And before you know it, like Sister Alfion said, women, let them know everything. They do. They do. And you know what? If it were me, you can't afford to do that these days. You have to be very, very selective and very cautious until you're sure that this is the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. But the interview, you're gonna go through they're gonna take you through the interview because they're gonna find out if who you are and what you have is worth them spending their time. Simple as that. It's just that simple. Just that simple. And it's very, very important. I talked to a young lady the other day. I think she is 38 years old. She met a guy that was in his 50s, and they were talking over the phone and everything for a while, and she said that he told her that he wanted to take her out on a date. She said, okay, well, when are you coming? Well, where are we going? She said he didn't have any idea where he wanted to take her, and he didn't have a car. She said, so how are you going to take me somewhere if you don't have a car? She said, you 50 years old with no car? But he spent $500 for a video game.
Tons of men, 40, 50, 60, no car, nowhere to live, no income.
Mm-mm.
What were they doing with their lives?
That's why you
jail.
Go. He wants to see if you have enough to sustain his lifestyle. She said, and then when
homosexuals.
She said when she told him that, he was like, well, wait a minute, give me a chance to get it together. She said, you should already had it together. You 50 years old. Can't come and get you and take you out on no date.
They're homosexuals. They hop from house to house to house to house to apartment to whatever until they too old, and then they up in some state-run nursing home, and that's where they always end up.
That's terrible. It's terrible. Can't come and get you and take you out on a date and open the car door and plan a date and take you somewhere.
Where was he going to take her? To McDonald's?
Nowhere without no car, because she wasn't going for it. She was like, oh, no, that's not going to work. So it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. You have to be able to set boundaries. Because when it comes to financial boundaries, when you're married, it should be open book. You should know certain things just to know in the event that something happens and that you're going to be held liable for the things. If you are single, there is no reason for you to discuss where you work, how much money you make. Don't go on the interview. Can't skip the interview. Because I guarantee you say that again, sis.
They're there to weed you out. They need to figure out how you going to fit into his plan. That's the interview. Yeah. I need to see how much money you make, and if that's going to satisfy what I'm trying to do. He's not trying to get to know you.
Yeah, exactly.
Men who are about something don't give two rats behind about how much money you make. He's looking to provide for you.
Supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be that way. But skip the interview. Completely skip it. Don't let him take you through the interview. Avoid the interview at all costs.
And if he does, with you out to dinner, flag your waiter down. Can I have my ticket, and walk your tail up out of there?
Right.
Just get up and leave. Just leave.
But you know what? Most sisters are not strong enough to do that. I don't know.
Because they like the attention from men. They love attention from men. Ooh, girl, he said I'm so pretty, and he liked my shape, and he liked my hair, and they think that's the most a man could do. They just anytime a man says you pretty, you just fall for it. Oh, he said I was pretty, and he ain't never seen nobody with beautiful skin like mine. That don't mean anything.
No, not at all. No.
He just ear hustling you. He's just satisfying your ears. That's it. He don't mean that. You being pretty hasn't paid a single bill. Being pretty ain't gonna keep you from anything. Oh, you got a good shape, and you just a different type of woman. And what's that going to do for you? Nothing. That shows nothing about who he is. Him flattering you gives no information about the type of man that he is.
That's the truth. That's why I said skip the interview. You start doing things to find out who he is. Understand that person's character. Watch him. Talk about other things, but don't go on the interview. Don't do it. So I think this has been very interesting tonight. I mean, that financial boundary has to be there. That financial transparency has to be there. That understanding of what's necessary has to be there. Not just because you have kids involved, but you involved. Because if I'm going to be held responsible, I have to know what's going on. And like you said, if he don't want to tell you, then you have to find ways to find out things that you're being held responsible for in the marriage. That means credit card bills, hospital bills, all of it. Because I guarantee you, they gonna call you when it come time. They gonna call you. So I think, I wanted to say, I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight, and to giving that feedback, because this is the things that we need to start putting up on the internet so that our young women will be able to understand the do's and the don'ts. Because we have to be able to hold these men responsible. They have to be men. And no, it's not acceptable for you to be 50 years old, sleeping on somebody's couch with no car, nowhere. No.
You need to be in a position that if anything happens, you can skip a meal so that your family can eat. It can't be that you're starving.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sis.
I've been laughing because some of this stuff is just absolutely ridiculous. So, it's one thing to be single, but if you're going to be the head of a household and responsible for others, you need to be able to sacrifice for your family. Absolutely. And they, in turn, will love you. They'll love you because they can see that you have a commitment to them that is not going to, just that they can depend on you. Absolutely. But you can't depend on someone who is not honest, who's not open. You're always guessing. No. He said this is a person who's supposed to lay down their life for you. No greater love.
No greater love, absolutely. In a perfect world, if that's how it's supposed to be. But again, a lot of people are with the wrong people. And a lot of us don't know how to have a relationship. We haven't had an example. Nobody has been there to say, okay, this is how it's done the right way. This is what you need to do. And you need to sit down and be honest with each other and open up and this and that and the other. If you're going to get married, marriage means transparency. A lot of people haven't seen that. They don't have the example. So everybody goes to their prospective corners, huddling and secretly holding what they have together because they're afraid. Nobody wants to be transparent and vulnerable. But if you guess what, you might as well, because both of you all are responsible for both of you all. You're responsible for the decisions that you make until that marriage terminates or somebody leaves either through death or divorce. You're responsible. Now, that doesn't mean when you get off the phone, you go arguing, I need to know. No. You have to sit down and have a conversation. Look, anything can happen. I need to know what's going on. And if they still refuse, then you have to find out what's going on because you're going to be held responsible. You are. And to the men
I think that'd be good homework.
Yes, well,
good homework. I found with bifurcation. How do you spell this? bifurcation. Bifurcation. You guys need to look up your state if they allow bifurcation. Ohio allows it. Texas does not. And you need to understand what that means.
Spell it again. It's
FURCATION, bifurcation.
Yeah.
And you need to understand what that means. If your state doesn't allow it, that means you need to go to divorce. They're not going to allow separation. If your state allows it, they're going to allow you a separation period. You need to understand what that means. Also, homestead. Some of y'all are living with men that you're not married to. You decide to break up with him, and that lease is in your name. You may have to legally evict him out of that house. Find out what your homestead acts are in your state.
Yep.
That would be great homework for some people.
Absolutely. For a lot of people. Absolutely. For sure. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And I know that even if you have a house and you're about to be divorced or whatever, and they have contributed to the fixing up of the house and buying things for the house, they have a certain percentage of the house in the things
exactly.
That they say, yeah, that's a part of it too. That's definitely a part.
They can come back and put a lien. If you own your house and he fixed up the basement, he can come and put a lien on your house before you can sell it.
Yeah. Absolutely. But you know what? You shouldn't have to even think about those things when you get ready to get together. It teaches you what to do and what not to do, period. Because nobody advocates for divorce. It's not what nobody advocates for that. And it can be avoided if everybody would just be correct. Just come correct. But when you deal with two consenting adults, and you have one of them that you're treating like a child, that's not going to last long. That's not. It's not going to last. Everybody's an adult. And then I'm responsible for the things that you're not telling me you're doing? Oh, no, that really ain't going to last long at all. And vice versa. So we have to be honest and open and transparent with what we're doing and set boundaries. If you're single, keep your financial information to yourself. If you are married and you all do not have an open relationship, you need to sit down and talk about the situation. If they refuse to talk about it with you, you need to find someone that can help you find out what you're going to be held responsible for. In the event that they're sick, you need to know the information that you need to know. And if you're planning on leaving your spouse or your wife, you need to find information about that as well. It's just the truth. And men are bold now. They'll ask you, well, how much money you make? They will. Just bold. And most of the time when you ask them, they lying to you. They're not telling you the truth. And they be in the club just dancing. I'm a nurse. Oh, yeah, you a nurse? Oh, yeah, well, you probably making big money, ain't you, girl? And she's twitching and dancing. I made $85,000 last year. Oh, really? He chinging that up in his mind like, cha-ching. You got any kids? Oh, no, I don't have no kids. I'm just about, oh, he's like, oh, this a catch. Stop talking so much. And a lot of women do that to try to lure people in. Now, when you dangle the carrot, you might not get a rabbit, you might get a rat. Just saying. I was told that the guy went to work, brought this girl into his house, went to work. He was thinking they didn't really have a relationship. When he came back from work, all his stuff was gone. She had moved everything he owned out of his house. Can you imagine coming back home and your house is empty? Empty. Crucial. Now, he gone for 8 hours. Within 8 hours, she called a moving company to move his stuff out. Probably had planned it. I know stories of girls tell me men done did that. They done left the house to go to work, and the men done cleaned them out. One came in the house and took all the stuff. You got to be careful. For the young single women, the married women, you got to sit down and talk to your husband. You got to sit down and have a conversation, a real conversation. That's an issue that you have to know. And if they just refuse to tell you, you're going to have to find out, because you're going to be responsible for it anyway. You are. No. Anybody else have anything to say before we dismiss? I think this went really well tonight. I really appreciate the interaction and the talking and the sharing, because these are issues that we really have to be able to bring to the forefront and let them know. And as far as Israel is concerned, know your value. If he don't want to marry you the legal way, leave him alone. He got you living up in a Section 8 apartment on welfare. That's not, no.
Know his family.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming that when they were moved out, they didn't know where these people lived or their family lived. I'm thinking, wait a minute now.
Absolutely.
So you can know what kind of people you're dealing with. Watch their interactions with the people that they are closest to. And if they're not close to anyone else, that might be a sign.
Yeah, and if it's two people working together to have something, you ought to be able to come up. If you still on Section 8 and you still getting food stamps and you have somebody in your life, there's something wrong. You got two incomes. You ought to be able to come up. All right, everybody. Well, you know what? Like I said, thank you so much for tonight. The boundaries, the financial boundary things have been, we'll try to cover this a little bit more next week and actually put a list together. But I think we've said a lot of things tonight that's very informative to the people that are listening. Know your self-value. Make yourself worth something. Stop being the spiritual slave. Because even in Christianity, everybody got this mentality, you my wife, you my helpmate. You supposed to be here. We're not slaves. We are two consenting adults that came in to have a relationship. Men they so easy to take you back to the Bible. The Bible say a lot of things. Do you do everything that it says that you're supposed to do? They have turned women into slaves, spiritual slaves. You're supposed to love us. No. We're going to have to get this right. Because I know we can do it. We have the ability to do it. We just got to get it right. The things we've been doing, it just ain't been right. We got to do this the right way. Okay, so on that note, we will see you guys next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Share this with your friends and families. I put this video up on YouTube today. I'm working on it still. I'm going to try to put this one up tomorrow. Once I get this thing situated, we're going to put this up tomorrow for sure. And you guys bring somebody to the class next week, and we're going to share this video put it on the internet with our Hebrew Israelite family, both men and women, because men get taken advantage of and women do just like women do. We got to be able to share this with our young people. We got young people growing up in their 20s and 1920s and early 30s. They need to know these things so they know what to do. All right, and that note, shalom, shalom, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.